Hello Internet, today I'm going to build a shaker style step stool just like this one. I built this step stool back in 2005 and it's lived in our kitchen ever since then, and it is solid as the day I built it. It's a little dinged up here and there, that's what you get from 15 years of use. But the glue and the dowels have never given any hint of loosening up. Now I love Mission and Craftsman and shaker style furniture, but especially shaker style furniture. Originally, back when I was designing this 15 odd years ago, I thought I'd make like a faithful historic reproduction, sort of like this one, or this one. I wanted to make, a faithful historic reproduction piece of furniture. I thought that would be neat, but then I started looking at them and it's like, this one is 24 inches tall, and this one also is 25¼ inches tall. So a 25-inch tall stool, and I'm 6'3", that adds up to 8'4", and we've got 8-foot ceilings in our house. That's just not going to work. Lots of people have 8-foot ceilings. Our house is from 1984, 70s, 80s, all those houses had 8-foot ceilings around here in Canada at least. You're getting 9-foot ceilings now, but still, regardless, I had an 8-foot ceiling, so a 25-inch tall step stool was not going to work. Much as I loved it, I was not able to do a actual reproduction of a shaker piece, so instead it's a shaker inspired piece. I worked from the designs that I'd seen in this book and other books, came up with my own. Instead of 25 inches tall, I went with 19 inches tall. That's still tall, but I'm not going to hit the ceiling when I step on it. And of course, my kids were a lot shorter when I built it, and it worked great for them. So yeah, not 25 inches tall, 19 inches tall, not 3 steps, but 2, a few other tweaks here and there. You still want it to be solid, so I've got it about 17 by 12, so that it's a good solid foundation. And really, like I said at the beginning of the video, we've had this for 15 years and it's worked great for us, and so now I'm going to build another one. So from my plans, one of the first pieces I want to build is this side piece because it's one of the largest. Now this is a large L-shaped piece of wood, and ideally, you might have like a 30-inch by 12 or 13-inch wide board that you would cut this through by nesting it together, but I don't happen to have enough wood for that. Rather, the maple that I have is 21 inches long, so instead I'm going to cut the one piece in half, and then I'm going to glue it together in an L-shaped fashion. So I've cut the 2 upright parts of the step stool sides to width, 6 inches, and then these parts are going to get glued in, and I've made sure that this is 90 degrees, and then we just need to make sure that we get a nice glue joint there. So I've got the 2 front cross pieces that are 2 inches wide, and I've got the rear cross piece which is 6 inches wide, and they all need to be the same length of 17 inches. Now, if they're plus and minus a fraction, it doesn't matter, but what matters is that they're all the same. So I'm setting a stop block here on my crosscut sled to make sure that when I cut these, they're all identical. For the rear cross piece, I want to have a nice oval cut out of it. You could try drawing that on the piece. I found it easier to draw it on in the computer, and then I printed out a 1-to-1 pattern that I'm going to cut out now, and then I will trace right on the piece. If I was making a whole bunch of these, of course, I would make a plywood pattern, but this 1-to-1 pattern is available in my plan package, which is available for sale on my website for a modest price. Now you can cut this out on the bandsaw if you have a bandsaw, or you can cut it out with a jigsaw, or you can cut it out with a fret saw if you really want to, but I wouldn't try doing that on hard maple. So with the bandsaw, I cut close to the line, but not right on the line, and then I took it over to my spindle sander where I sanded up to the line to bring it to a nice curve. And this is one of those very forgiving projects because it's under a footstool. It's going to be close to the floor. So if it looks pretty good, it's good enough. So after taking these out of the clamps, I went over to the table saw and I ripped it to width, and then I also trimmed it to length. Now in the plan we can see there's several notches that need to be cut, and that's what I've been marking here, and I will be doing that on the bandsaw. I suppose if you wanted to, you could surface mount all of these. I don't want to, but you could. In my design I've got an arch cut out of the bottom in the center, and I set my compass to 4 inches to make that arc. It's not entirely arbitrary because that's leaving me with 2-inch feet on either side, which is again picking up the 2-inch width of the cross pieces, so I'm using the same dimension throughout the piece. So with all the notches cut, I can put it together for a dry fit at least, and I get to look at what it's going to look like. And I have some walnut that's going to go, that I need to now cut to size, that's going to make up the treads. I think I've mentioned before, I like putting contrasting woods together. I was looking at some Osage orange that I had, but I just found the yellowy green. I know it's going to darken, but it was yellowy green, and I wasn't really liking that. I think the darker chocolate brown of walnut is going to work better here. So we'll get those ripped to size, and then we can work on putting it together. So I'm ready to start gluing it together now, and I've taken down the dry fit halfway. I've got the bottom still clamped up to hold it rigid, and I've added these 90-degree brackets here that are holding the 2 legs, and it's got this rigidly marked so I can line up the top braces and get them into position, and so it's all nicely lined up for gluing, because I'm going to be using dowels, decorative dowels, but also which also provides strength, but I'm going to start with just gluing it, and then I'll put the dowels in later. What you could do, what I did on the original 15 years ago, is I put some biscuit slots in the top for this first piece. I'm skipping that now because I think I've got it aligned nicely, and I can just clamp it into position. And just enough for the glue to hold until I can get to the dowel part of it. Okay. And with the top part done, I'm going to loosen off the bottom, and then I can clamp that glue that into position also. We'll let the glue sit up for half an hour or 45 minutes or so. So I have some contrasting wood dowels, which I sliced into 1.5-inch lengths, because that's roughly how deep I'm going. And I've drilled matching holes, and this is something I always test. I've drilled several test holes because dowels can vary in diameter, and you want to have a nice snug fit. In fact, my fit is a little bit on the loose side today, so I'm not even using a hammer to put in the dowels. Exotic wood dowels like this can be hard to find. This set here, if you can believe it, are almost 20 years old. Back in the early 2000s when I was looking for some dowels, the places are like, well, they're not making them anymore, so you better buy them while you can. So I bought 10 3-foot long dowels from this vendor, but you you don't usually use 3 feet at a time. You're using like 1.5 inches here and there. So yeah, I'm hoping these are going to swell up nicely, because I usually you pound them in for a nice tight fit, but these are just sliding in. Okay. And a little bit later we can pull out the flush cutting saw to clean this up. Well, I think I'll be reaching for the chisel pretty quickly. Almost there. Just got to get the steps attached. Now, how to do that? I know some people will obsess on that. This one is solid from 15 years ago. The way I did this one is I put a biscuit here and here in both of those, partly because I wanted to, and I was a lot less sure of myself back then. I've come to think that really the strength is going to be here, because here we have a long grain glue joint to long grain. And as everybody always says, modern glues are stronger than wood. So I'm planning to skip the biscuit joints this time. If you were to build this, you could do it as an additional bit of insurance or not. Now, down for the lower step, I only have one piece of here. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to put 1, maybe 2 dowels in here. I'm going to use just dowel centers. These little silver dowel centers, just use that to mark the spot for connecting them. Using little pieces here to guide. So I had the camera zoomed in here to show the dowel center, but it's almost too close now to see what is going on. I'm using these bits of wood on the side to help center and position the step, and then I'm going to give a nice firm downward push so that the dowel center makes a mark on the underside of the step. I have some nice marks exactly where I need to drill my dowels. So I'm not really worrying about the end grain. I'm just putting glue on the long grain part of the joint. Then I'm putting glue in the dowel hole and a little bit around the dowel also. That turned out a lot tighter than I was anticipating, which reassures me that it's not going anywhere. Here we go. Fitting the top board is considerably simpler because I got 2 long grain joints here and I'm not going to bother with dowels. I still don't want it slipping around, so I think I'm going to put a couple of brads and clip the tops off just to keep it from moving. I want to get the top tread in the exact right position, so I've made these little 3/4 inch spacers and I've taped them to the side. And I have a couple 1/2 inch pieces of plywood here on the top. And I can use these now. That will help line everything up. Good. Now, brads. I'm going to do the little technique where you tap in a couple of tiny little finishing nails. And then you clip the tops off because, you know, they have heads on them. And that'll just leave a little pointed barb that will keep it from slipping. Here we go. And then push it into place. Okay. Now, that's not going anywhere. 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to chamfer the edges of it, but I don't really feel like reaching for the router, and it won't be able to get into these tight corners. But just with a block plane, you just count your strokes and you're going to get a pretty consistent chamfer. It's a little tricky going upside down, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Using a Danish oil for the finish. Nice and simple. Wipe on, let it soak in. Look at that walnut just burst into life. And this is why I like using contrasting dowels. If you're going to use dowels there, make it a feature. And I'm just cutting that scene there because somehow I had the camera aimed wrong and you couldn't even see what I was doing. And anyways, it's not that exciting watching me apply finish. So here we've got the finished product. I've got 2 coats of Danish oil on it, and I think it's looking stunning. And that brings us to the end of another project. As always, thanks for coming by. I hope you found something interesting and enjoyable. If you feel I've earned it, please consider subscribing. If you'd like to build a version of this step stool for yourself, I've got plans available on my website, which you can find linked in the description below. Okay, that's all, guys. We'll see you on the next one.